Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Tory leadership, Johnson and Hunt trade blows over Brexit and Trump from 20 minutes ago from the BBC. Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt have clashed on Brexit and UK relations with Donald Trump in a lively and occasionally bad-tempered TV debate. This video will focus mainly on Trump in response to Sir Darroch, and not so much on Brexit. Mr. Hunt accused his rival of not being willing to put his neck on the line by saying he would quit as PM if he did not hit the 31st October deadline. To which Johnson responded that he doesn't want the EU to be able to use that as a bargaining chip to get him to be denounced as Prime Minister. That if you were to say, yes, I would leave, then the EU would do their best to stop the UK leaving by the 31st of October in order to then stop Boris Johnson being Prime Minister, in the hope, then, of course, to get a pro-Remain party. And the trade unions behind Labour have said that they want to be pro-Remain, and Labour must concrete its position of being pro-Remain, either having another vote or trying to get back inside the EU after we leave. Mr. Johnson said he admired his rival's ability to change his mind so often and dig the fact that Mr. Hunt voted to Remain. And we've already seen what one Remain Prime Minister does. I don't think we should have another one. yes, I'm definitely giving my opinion here. But Johnson declined to condemn Mr. Trump's response to the emails row, and that is in response to Sir Darroch, who described the White House as inept and dysfunctional in leaked cables. Now, we don't know how many emails were sent, and if he was told to be candid and say, hey, we know you're the diplomat, that you are supposed to be very diplomatic. Your one job is to keep good relations with the US, and you should be aware that there could be many people reading this, and there was a chance of being leaked, in which case he made a mistake. Or you could say, well, he is supposed to be as frank and honest as he can be and keep things simple when he's corresponding back to Whitehall and not have to worry about it being leaked because of the trust and security that is supposed to be inside the establishment, essentially, and therefore he should be as frank and blunt as he can be. But most of what he said to say that, hey, Trump has a big ego, so butter him up, and don't be blunt but be frank, that goes the same for pretty much everyone, especially world leaders. If you're trying to get the best out of them, then be nice to them, flatter them somewhat. I'm not saying be brown-tongued. US President has lambasted Sir Kim and criticised Theresa May after the diplomat described the White House as inept and dysfunctional in the cables, yes, and Jeremy Hunt white-knighted to leap to Theresa May's defence, saying that the US President shouldn't attack Theresa May like that after all she's done for the US as well. So he's saying the exchange were pointed and personal in nature at times, with former Mayor of London Mr. Johnson dismissing his opponent's managerial style of politics and accusing him of flip-flopping on certain issues. I don't see the point in this debate really, considering Johnson's going to win, and good on him, good luck to him. And you can even see here, hand in his pocket, he's relaxed, he doesn't care, whereas this guy's holding on for dear life. Boris Johnson went in the favourite, came out the favourite. So, Jeremy Hunt saying the UK needed a leader, not a newspaper columnist. But I don't see a problem with that because it means that he's written in the Daily Telegraph every week, and you can see his views over time, and he's been honest because he didn't think he'd be Prime Minister. So I think that's good. Same thing as YouTube personalities or social media personalities then running for office. It's like, well, that's good because we see what you were thinking before you cared about trying to be polite and restrained, in which case that's good because then you're more honest, and that encourages you to be more honest in future because you can't hide the past. Hunt joked that he admired Johnson's ability to answer the question, sarcastically, adding, he puts a smile on your face and you forget what the question was. A great quality for a politician, but not necessarily a Prime Minister. So, Mr. Johnson in turn said it was clear his rival was not absolutely committed to the deadline himself, branding him defeatist and for the 31st of October for the UK to leave the EU, and urged Jeremy Hunt to guarantee Brexit would happen by Christmas, and the EU would not take a papier-mâché deadline seriously. That's fair enough, considering it already hasn't. I was getting excited for our departure, and yet it didn't happen. We're still in the EU, even after we voted that we should be out by now. And Boris Johnson has already said that if the Conservatives don't deliver, then it's the end of the Conservative Party, and I definitely agree with that. He said, I don't want to hold out to the EU the prospect that they might encourage my resignation by refusing to agree a deal. He added, I think it's extraordinary we should be telling the British electorate we're kicking the can down the road. Yes. I'd like to know how many more days my opponent would be willing to delay. This infighting all seems very unnecessary to me. Mr. Hunt suggested his rival was minimising the risk of a no-deal Brexit and peddling optimism. Well, I don't think that matters, because the outward face is supposed to be not only for the people of your own country saying, we will do well, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but also then to your enemy, in this case it's the EU, saying, you can throw your worst at us and it doesn't matter, we will survive. We've beaten Germany twice before, we will beat you a third time. Mr. Hunt categorically ruled out whether they might be prepared to suspend Parliament's forced through a no deal. Mr. Johnson said he would not take anything off the table. And good man. That is the same with Trump talking with Mexico or China or Iran. Whether it's the migrants on the border wall, the trade deal, or trade war, if you'd rather, and possibly attacking a Japanese ship. The idea of saying you're not going to take anything off the table because that leaves your enemy on edge, or your opponent on edge, wondering whether or not you're going to do something that would really suck for them. Whereas if you say, oh yes, like, no deal Brexit sucks and we would never do that, like Jeremy Corbyn has said, then they're going to take everything they can from you because you know you're not going to leave without a deal. Same thing as if you say, oh, we would never fire back nuclear weapons or use Trident if we were attacked, because that's morally wrong. That's only going to give the option to your opponent to say, hey, actually, we could attack them because they won't respond. Again, something Jeremy Corbyn has said. On the escalating diplomatic war with the US, and Trump has just said he won't deal with Sir Kim Darroch, Mr. Hunt said the President's criticism of Sir Kim Darroch had been ill-judged and he would, if he became PM, not be forced into recalling diplomat early. He does resign in December. Also took issue with Mr. Trump saying the Prime Minister had failed to listen to his advice and been made to look foolish over Brexit. His comments about Theresa May were unacceptable and I don't think he should have made them, he said, remarks which prompted audience applause. Okay, so now Theresa May is okay, even though she's a Tory. Right. Gotcha. Mr. Johnson, clearly Trump's favourite, said the US President had been dragged into a British political debate, not of his making, but did suggest his outburst on Twitter, in which he called Sir Kim a pompous fool, had not necessarily been the right thing to do. And that's fair enough. I mean, if somebody, tries to attack you or undermine you, then you're going to do a similar thing back to undercut their offence. While civil servants must be able to give confidential advice, he declined to comment on Sir Kim's future, only asking Mr. Hunt to rule out extending his term out of sympathy. And that is, well, I'm intrigued to know what you guys think. Do you think that a foreign diplomat should at all times be thinking, well, I've got to be keeping the relations good between these two countries, or can they be more candid in their correspondence with their own country and shouldn't be held accountable if what they said was a bit blunt, seeing as they were speaking in confidence? What do you guys think? And then the tax pledge mistake, because Jeremy Hunt sought to make capital out of Mr. Johnson's pledge to give a tax cut to high earners by raising the threshold at which people pay 40% tax from £50,000 to £80,000. And considering inflation happens, it's to be expected that you should actually be raising these tax brackets from time to time if you have them at all. I'm all for a flat tax. 10%, everybody, no matter how much you're earning, it's always 10%. It encourages you to earn more because you keep the same proportion of your earnings. The richer are then paying their fair share because they're still paying the same percentage as the poor people. They're then able to spend their money as they choose fit, and they're going to make better decisions than the government, and they're able to invest, in which case they're employing people because they are investing in people. So it helps everybody out. Definitely. Jeremy Hunt says, mistake tax cuts for the rich. I've spent my life trying to persuade people we are not the party of the rich. Yeah, well, you're not. If you help out the rich people, more rich people are going to... I mean, it's hardly rich. It's not even six figures yet. But still, as much as I'm against inflation, because you say that, oh, I'm going to pay you for these 8 hours of work done. Cool. But in a week, your 8 hours of work are only going to be 7 hours, 58 minutes. And over the last 100 years, what is it, that the dollar and the pound sterling have lost about 95% of their value, which I think shows just how crap it is and how unfair it is for the individuals. But of course it's great for politicians who are promising to give out free money and healthcare, welfare, free tuition, anything supposedly free which just taxpayers are paying for. either directly or indirectly, if you're printing money by quantitative easing. And we all know how that ended up in Germany and Zimbabwe and Venezuela most recently, where they're now going back to a bartering system because the money's useless. So they're saying 160,000 or so party members get the chance to vote by post on who should succeed Theresa May. PM will be built on 23rd July, and it'll be the first time a sitting Prime Minister has been chosen by party members. Yes, you vote in a party, and whoever's leader of the party is therefore leader of the country if they win. That's fair enough. It's a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. That's understood. But always, let me know what you guys think. Am I wrong? Should Hunt be PM? Am I wrong about tax plans? Am I wrong about saying that Johnson shouldn't resign on Halloween if they haven't got Brexit? Even though I'm sure he will. And do you think he should anoint Nigel Farage as Foreign Secretary? Because obviously Trump gets on well with him, or at least diplomat then for the US. Because that will take Farage out of the race, so that will give the Brexit votes to the Tories. And obviously Trump gets on very well with Farage, so that will do very well. He's probably the best Englishman for the job. Or do you think that's a bad idea because having a Brexit party keeps the Tories on their toes about delivering Brexit? Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you next time.